This is Group 1's project on embryonic stem cell therapy. The following is a short clip that highlights some of the arguments for and against the use of embryos to produce stem cells.
The use of embryos to produce stem cells is a hotly debated topic. At a recent stem cell conference in London, scientists and lay people were keen to put forward their views.
I can't honestly say that I have a strong position on embryonic stem cell research. I personally believe in all research, find out what happens, what's involved, and we can then make the decisions which are based on the ethics.
I've been an embryologist all my scientific career, developmental biologist, and I think you'll find most people that understand developmental biology understand where these cells come from, and the fact that they're human, I don't think is really here nor there.
I think the notion of mass producing our own species, just so you can destroy them to create things in a lab, is abhorrent. And you haven't got to be pro-life, you haven't got to believe the early embryo has a soul or is fully human. It's basically the beginning of one of us, and therefore we should respect it.
Of course, I understand that to some people the idea of doing anything with a human embryo is a deeply offensive idea. And I understand and respect the difference of opinion.
My name is Alison Davis. I have spina bifida, osteoporosis and various other disabilities. I use a wheelchair full time and I run a group called No Less Human. No Less Human is a group for disabled people, families and carers, and we campaign for the equal right to life of all disabled people.
At present, the law allows scientists to experiment on embryos up until they're 14 days old. This is something that people like Alison Davis are opposed to.
I think it matters what we do to embryos because they are human individuals. They are at the beginning of all their development, certainly. But if you say they're just a bunch of cells, then you're forgetting that I also am just a bunch of cells. So is every human being who exists. It matters what we do to human beings because we have a duty to protect the most vulnerable.
But let's just consider the stage of development it's reached. It's so small, it's smaller than a grain of sand. It has about 200 cells. It will be weeks before a central nervous system develops. And that means that there is no possibility of it being aware. And because it lacks this particular consciousness, this particular aspect of being human, that would be the reason why, for me, it is acceptable to use those embryos in research or in therapy.
And this is where the dilemma lies. Some people believe that as soon as an egg cell is fertilized, it becomes a human being. Meanwhile, others say that an embryo develops gradually towards being a human individual, and that by the legal limit of 14 days, it is still just a ball of cells.
I think it's wrong to suggest that people who are opposed to embryo research are being oversensitive. Each of us began life as a single cell and then as an embryo. Embryos are not potential human beings, they're actual human beings. Human life at itself begins at the moment of fertilization.
I think that what's important in making the judgments about an embryo is that there should be a national framework. I think these judgments are too sensitive to be made by research workers, by the patients who might benefit, by companies who might make money from it.
I mean, I'd be first in line for ethical stem cell research, and there are ethical sources of stem cells which are already treating people with disabling conditions. But I couldn't possibly countenance killing vulnerable human beings because there might be something in it for me.
Medical professionals and scientists have the ability to take embryonic stem cells and manipulate them into replacement cells for organs. Doing so could potentially cure illnesses such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and diabetes. Michael J. Fox and Muhammad Ali are both suffering from the devastating effects of Parkinson's disease. Fox has been an outspoken advocate for embryonic stem cell research in hopes of finding a cure for Parkinson's. Embryonic stem cell therapy offers great hope to millions who suffer from a variety of injuries, disabilities, and diseases. A stem cell is a single cell that can replicate itself or differentiate into many other cell types. This diagram shows the many areas in which embryonic stem cell research holds promise. Among these are the prevention and treatment of birth defects, toxicity testing, and potential drug therapies. Embryonic stem cells can be manipulated by scientists so that they can function as healthy bone marrow for cancer patients, healthy nerve cells for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's patients, heart muscle cells for those afflicted with heart disease, pancreatic cells to cure diabetes, and so on. The benefits of embryonic stem cell research could prove to be life-changing for millions of people who suffer from a variety of injuries, diseases, and disabilities. Literally everyone looking at this diagram can identify with something that is listed here. It is easy to see why people are so passionate about this issue. Though millions could be helped, the ethics of using human embryos for this purpose remains the center of serious debate. This brings us to the heart of the true ethical dilemma of embryonic stem cell research. Scientists, politicians, religious leaders, and medical professionals are among some of the groups that clash over the ethics versus therapeutic outcomes of embryonic stem cell therapy. Many ethical and moral concerns are at the center of the embryonic stem cell debate. Should an embryo be considered a person? Does life begin at conception, or at birth when a newborn takes its first breath, or somewhere in between? Understanding the basics of stem cell therapy is essential in order to form an ethical and educated opinion. Embryonic stem cells are derived from pre-implantation embryos. Because these cells are primitive in nature, they have the ability to divide and become more cells, or take shape in a specialized cell. This specialized cell can become cells of somatic tissue. Somatic cells make up all of our internal organs, skin, bones, blood, and connective tissue. Embryonic stem cells are pluripotent, which means they are able to develop into any of the cells in the human body. Embryonic stem cells are derived from eggs fertilized at an in vitro fertilization clinic and donated for research purposes. DNA from an adult cell is injected into a fertilized human egg with no nucleus. The egg then divides to form a mass of cells. After 5 days, a blastocyst is formed, which is a hollow embryonic ball of cells. Stem cells are then harvested from the inner cell mass of the blastocyst, and the embryo is destroyed. It is the destruction of the embryo, the beginning of a human life, that is at the center of the embryonic stem cell debate. Scientifically, the beginning of human life starts at conception. This is not a fact that can be debated. The egg from a woman and the sperm from a man unite, causing a zygote to form. What is the Christian worldview, and what does the Bible have to say? Group 1 believes that the answer to these questions can be found in Psalms 139, 13 through 16. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them. This verse clearly tells us that God forms us and values us when we are still just a substance within our mother's womb. The Bible as a whole supports the idea that all forms of life are very sacred. With the honor bestowed on all living things in the Bible, as well as the scientific aspect of when human life is formed, one can come to a clear conclusion that using embryonic stem cell therapy is unethical because it is considered taking one life to better another. Using the deontological approach, Group 1 has determined that we as human beings have the obligation to protect all life. Having determined that embryos are in the early stages of human life, we are obligated to value them the same way that God does. Dehumanizing life because it does not yet look human becomes a very slippery slope. With the scientific advancements in other types of stem cell research, such as stem cells derived from adult tissues and from cord blood, there is still great promise that stem cell research will be the cure that so many people are hoping for, without the controversy of harvesting embryos. Thank you for joining us for this presentation. We hope that you found it to be informative, and we are looking forward to our discussion time.